O heavenly King, Comforter, Spirit of Truth, Word everywhere present and fill us all things, treasury of blessings and giver of life, come and dwell within us, cleanse us of all stain, and save our souls, O gracious one. Well, welcome back to the Michael Lofton Show on Reason and Theology. Well, Pope Francis gave an interview this morning, just came out with Vatican News, and he has some interesting comments about his critics, some of the critics who are dissenting against his most recent magisterial act. And I want to take a look at that because for years, Catholics who have remained faithful to the magisterium have been gaslighted. And we've been told all sorts of things. And we've been just constantly told that we are wrong, we are deceived, that we are defending the indefensible. All sorts of gaslighting has occurred. But at the end of the day, those who are defending the magisterium are on the side of St. Peter, as Peter speaks through his successors, especially in the Roman pontiff. So it's never wrong to defend the magisterium. In fact, it is always wrong to publicly dissent against the magisterium. Again, the Catholic Church does not allow for public dissent against the magisterium. It does allow for some constructive criticism, but never dissent. Again, see Dona Veritatis and the plenty of videos that I've done on it. But again, a lot of us have been gaslighted and made to feel bad for defending the magisterium and like there's something wrong with us. But Pope Francis shows actually, you know what? It's not you who is in the wrong. It's actually those who are dissenting against the magisterium, whom he calls straight up schismatic. And so I want to take a look at that. Before I do that, I want to remind you to hit that subscribe button. Help me grow Reason and Theology. Just reached 75,000 subscribers. Thank you to everybody who made that possible. Unfortunately, at the same time, while the channel has reached 75,000, the channel's also lost over 30,000 subscribers for defending the magisterium. It is not a popular position. It is incredibly popular to trash and lie and dissent. But for some reason, telling the truth and defending the magisterium is not a very popular position. So, because of that, there's just not a lot of content out there that does defend the magisterium. So, help me reach others who have never heard of Reason and Theology and thus have likely not heard a defense of the magisterium during this pontificate. Help me reach those people by hitting that subscribe button if you haven't done it yourself already. And while you're at it, hit the like button. Okay, let me go to the interview here that he gave with La Stampa that is mentioned on or covered on Vatican News. Again, interview done today. So this is just fresh off the press. In the interview, Pope Francis recalled that Christ calls everyone from within, referring to the declaration Fiducia Supplicans that allows for blessings of persons in irregular or same-sex couples. And again, to stress, he has been saying the blessing is for persons, not their union. Unfortunately, that did not get a lot of press. Oddly enough, I linked to a Eastern Orthodox outlet earlier this morning in a community post where I show that even the Eastern Orthodox are commenting on the fact that Pope Francis says the blessing in Fiducia Supplicans is for persons, not the relationship, not the union. For some reason, it's odd that Eastern Orthodox are more willing to put the truth out there on this particular point than some Catholics at this point. Pretty sad to see that. Be that as it may, it continues, the gospel is to sanctify everyone, he said. Of course, there must be goodwill, and it is necessary to give precise instructions on the Christian life. I emphasize that it is not the union that is blessed, but the persons. Again, he emphasizes that over and over and over. Week after week, he has said this. It has unfortunately received very, very little coverage. And to our shame, it has received little coverage from Catholics. But we are all sinners, he says. Why should we make a list of sinners who can enter the church and a list of sinners who cannot be in the church? This is not the gospel. Regarding criticisms of the document, the Pope noted that those who vehemently protest belong to small ideological groups. So now we're talking not about people who just kind of have some concerns or offer some constructive criticism of Fiducia Supplicans. That's understandable. Offering some constructive criticism here and there, having some concerns about the way in which this was prudentially discussed or, promulgated, whatever. We can have that discussion. That's not who he's talking about here. He's talking about those who have vehemently protested against the document, public dissent, the dissenters. So that's the group he's talking about, not people who are of goodwill and honest and just have some concerns and questions. That's not who he is talking about. He's talking about the people who trash the magisterium, constantly slander his name, completely reject the document, claim it's heretical, and so on and so forth. We've had cardinals who have done that. We've had bishops and plenty of priests and theologians and social media personalities and so on. That's who he is talking about. So watch what he says. He described the church in Africa as a special case, since for them, homosexuality is something ugly from a cultural point of view. They do not tolerate it. He's saying, look, in Africa, the African secular culture, the culture as a whole, has homosexual acts as illegal. It's seen as illegal. It is not at all in any way tolerated legally in the African culture. And so because of that, the African church is not going to be able to implement these blessings for persons of the same sex, because that could then expose the person to legal penalties. So for that reason, the Pope has said, well, look, it's totally understandable if there are practical reasons why this can't be implemented. That's not the same as somebody who completely rejects the document on theological grounds. That would be an issue. But if you accept the document on theological grounds, but say, hey, it doesn't apply in my country or my territory for these reasons, these practical reasons, now that's something understandable. That's a different question. And the Pope has said, look, in the case of Africa, there's some things going on there legally, and because of the way the culture sees it, there's a special case there. And he continues, however, he added, I trust that gradually everyone will be reassured about the spirit of the declaration, which aims to include, not divide. It invites us to welcome and then entrust people and to trust in God. So the purpose of the blessing is to bring God's grace on a person so that they are freed from sin and turn away from a sinful lifestyle, as we've discussed at length. So I'm not going to belabor that point here. Now, here's kind of the money quote, right? Two things that he says here. Pope Francis admitted to sometimes feeling alone, but I still always strive ahead day after day, adding that he does not fear schisms. You know what? Faithful Catholics, those of y'all who have been faithful to the magisterium, I imagine you feel like that too. I imagine you feel alone when you're outnumbered by so many dissenting voices who smear the name of the Pope, who constantly go against the magisterium, ridicule it. You probably have been made to feel lonely. It's not a popular position to defend the magisterium these days, even within Catholicism. And you've been gaslighted, and you've been told there are problems with you. You're the wrong one. You're just uncharitable, or you're delusional. Well, you know what? Pope Francis also feels that way, because the reality is the vast majority of cardinals and bishops are not speaking up one way or another. They're not actually defending the papal magisterium. They're just silent. And then some cardinals and bishops are very vocal, but they are critiquing it, and not in a healthy way, but dissenting against it and trashing it and falsely accusing it and so on. And so I can imagine Pope Francis kind of feels alone at times. because the many bishops who could and should speak up and defend the papal magisterium are silent. And then the ones that are speaking up are slandering and misrepresenting the document. So you know what? If you felt alone, hey, you know what? Join the team, because the successor of St. Peter feels the exact same way right now. But here's the money quote. He says that he's going to continue to move forward despite feeling alone, despite the dissenters. In the church, there have always been small groups that manifest reflections of a schismatic nature. One must let them carry on and pass away and look ahead. He's saying those dissenters are schismatics. They have a schismatic nature, a schismatic tendency. And you know what? We're just going to ignore them and move on and continue to move forward as a church. Schismatics will be schismatics. Dissenters will be dissenters. But we still have to be faithful and move forward as a church. So you know what? For all those people who have gaslighted you and told you for defending the church, you're wrong, or to critique those who are constantly claiming to be Catholic but dissenting against the church, to say, hey, this is schismatic behavior. You know what? The successor of St. Peter agrees with you. That is schismatic behavior. You can rest assured, you can lay your head on your pillow tonight and sleep comfortably knowing you're not being uncharitable when you call the dissenters out for schismatic behavior. You're on the side of the successor of St. Peter, who also says, yep, those guys are being schismatic. And let me remind you, this is the same Pope Francis who has also said of many of these vicious critics that they're doing the work of the devil. You've probably also been gaslighted for pointing that out. But again, you are on the side of the successor of St. Peter. The most vicious critics in the Catholic Church, he says, are doing the work of the devil. He says, I personally deserve attacks and insults because I'm a sinner, but the church does not deserve them. Why does he make this distinction? Because when they slander a magisterial document, they are slandering the church, not just the person of Pope Francis. He says they're doing the work of the devil. I have also said this to some of them. My kind of guy. Direct, blunt. Let's not beat around the bush. If you are publicly dissenting against the magisterium, I'm not talking about, again, constructive criticism, asking questions. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about public dissent, slander. You are doing the work of the devil. And I appreciate a pope who can be blunt enough to just call it like it is and say, yeah, that's wrong. He noted there's also some priests who make many nasty comments about him, saying he sometimes loses patience with these people, especially when they make judgments without entering into a real dialogue. Doesn't that describe them? Constantly slandering, but they don't actually engage the arguments or the facts. I see this 24/7. Instead of addressing the arguments and the evidence and the facts, they just slander. They just say, Pope splainer, heretic, whatever. They don't actually engage the arguments. He says, I can't do anything there. In other words, I can't help this person. This person cannot be helped. However, I go on without entering their world of ideas and fantasies. I don't want to enter it, and that's why I prefer to preach. He said, noting that some people admonish him for not speaking more about topics such as holiness. They say I always talk about social issues and that I'm a communist. You heard that one before, right? We hear that even most recently. We've been hearing people say that. He says, yet I wrote an entire apostolic exhortation on holiness, Gaudet et Exultate. He also addresses communism in that, by the way. So again, let me just remind you, if you have felt alone for defending the magisterium, you're on the right side. And if you have been gaslighted and been made to feel like there's something wrong with you for just calling it like it is and saying, hey, you guys are doing the work of the devil, stop it. You guys are being schismatic, stop it. If you've been gaslighted and been made to feel wrong for that, well, rest assured, you're on the side of the successor of St. Peter. If everyone else tells you otherwise, you're on the right side because you're on the side of the successor of St. Peter. And those who oppose the successor of St. Peter in church history every single time are on the wrong side of history. However, I suspect the pendulum will swing back and it will become cool again within maybe 5 to 10 years to defend the magisterium. But right now it's unpopular. But rest assured, you're on the right side because St. Peter himself, through his successor, is saying exactly what you're saying. And so don't be made to feel wrong for calling it like it is, being blunt, saying this is schismatic in nature. It's wrong. It's doing the work of the devil. It is sinful. Don't be made to feel bad. You're on the right side. I hope y'all enjoyed this. Hit that like button and the subscribe button, especially the subscribe button, to help me grow the channel and reach more people who have never heard of the show and likely haven't heard a defense of the magisterium. I got plenty of content to that nature, so please go ahead and do your part by hitting that subscribe button. All right, that's going to do it. I'll see y'all in just a little bit for another show. God bless. Have you ever noticed that certain Catholic teachings are classified differently? For example, some are called dogmas and others are called doctrines. And then a denial of one of these teachings might be called heretical, while a denial of another might just be called an error. In reality, there are many classifications to various teachings that may be found in the Catholic Church. In my course, The Theological Notes, I offer a crash course on this system that will prepare you to identify a teaching's classification more easily. And I'll also help you determine what level of assent or adherence you are required as a Catholic to give to a particular doctrine. So, if you would like to take this course, visit reason.podia.com. Have you ever heard someone say that Pope Francis denied the existence of hell, or Pope Francis worshipped an idol in the Vatican gardens? There are many claims that have been made about Pope Francis for over a decade, and many of them are inaccurate. I've set the record straight in my free ebook called Top 10 Lies About Pope Francis Exposed. Get your free copy today by visiting reason.podia.com.